Some stories make headlines, others hide in plain sight. And then there are stories like this one. Stories that live in the shadows of mansions, behind velvet curtains, in footage you were never meant to see. I didn't believe it either, until I did. When I applied, I wasn't told who I'd be working for. The listing said private service. That's it. No celebrity name, no mansion photos. Just a hefty salary, and the words must value discretion. The agency vetting process was unusual. I was asked questions that had nothing to do with cleaning or event prep. Questions like, do you scare easily? And are you comfortable with unusual schedules? I chalked it up to Hollywood eccentricity. Rich people did weird things. And as long as the checks cleared, I didn't care. I flew out to Los Angeles under a pseudonym. That's what the agency told me to use for the initial onboarding. Best to not get too comfortable with your old name, the woman on the phone said. I didn't understand what she meant until I saw the house. It didn't look like a home. No number on the gate. Just a long gravel driveway lined with hedges that seemed to breathe in the wind. The trees around it were too quiet. There were no birds, no insects. The air had that heavy stillness you feel before a thunderstorm, even on cloudless days. Inside, it was colder than expected. Not temperature-wise. It was the atmosphere. The house looked expensive, sure. Polished wood floors, crystal chandeliers, even the air vents were trimmed in gold. But there were no family photos, no signs of life, just blank walls and an eerie silence that pressed against your eardrums like static you couldn't turn off. I wasn't introduced to Diddy right away. Instead, I met a team of handlers. None of them had last names. They spoke softly and avoided eye contact. One of them handed me a slim black booklet, my rule book. I remember the feeling of flipping through it and realizing how few of the rules had to do with actual work. Most of it was about behavior, where I could go, how I should speak, and what not to touch. There were entire pages outlining what I was not allowed to see. And then, without warning, I was told I'd be meeting the client. He didn't greet me, didn't say his name. He walked in wearing house slippers and a long black hoodie, looked me up and down, then gave a small nod. That was it. Yeah, he'll do. No handshake, no welcome. The next day, I started work. I never knew how many people actually lived or worked in the mansion. Some days the halls were empty. Other times I'd pass by unfamiliar faces. Young people, assistants maybe, walking quickly with their heads down. No one talked unless they had to. There were whole wings of the house I wasn't allowed in, but I became familiar with the core. The kitchen, lounge, the service quarters, and the strange hallway on the second floor lined with mirrors. That hallway, I still dream about it. It wasn't just reflective, it was distorting. If you walked down the center, your reflection seemed to lag half a second behind you, like the mirrors were remembering your movement in real time. I once passed through late at night and saw 3 people reflected behind me. When I turned around, I was alone. The lighting in the house was never consistent. You'd walk into a room at noon and find it lit like it was dusk. The bulbs gave off this golden hue, but there were no light switches. The brightness shifted depending on who was in the room. And music, always music, playing softly from hidden speakers. But the songs weren't from any playlist I knew. It wasn't jazz, it wasn't hip-hop. It was a strange mix of tones and loops, like background sound for a dream you didn't want to have. Diddy moved differently from everyone else. When he entered a room, the mood changed instantly. Sometimes he'd glide in and out without saying a word. Other times, he'd stop and stare, not at you, but into you. It was like being studied by something that didn't blink. Once, I found him in the performance lounge, sitting on the floor cross-legged, humming. Not a melody, just a low note that buzzed in the base of my skull. He turned slowly and whispered, "The house likes you." I told myself he was just eccentric, but I kept noticing things, like how there were no working clocks anywhere, no windows in certain corridors, and how, in some rooms, you could never tell what time it was. Even with your phone, your body lost track of day and night inside that place. The first time I saw Diddy actually speak to someone directly, intimately, it was a teenage boy. I didn't realize it then, but it was Justin Bieber. I'd been prepping one of the guest suites when I noticed Diddy walking Justin through the hallways. Justin looked young, barely 16. His face was still soft, still round. He didn't smile much. He looked distracted, like he was trying to stay alert without showing it. Later, on a break, I scrolled through my phone and saw a clip that stopped me cold. It was from a talk show. Diddy had his arm around Justin. They were laughing, but the laugh didn't reach Justin's eyes. Diddy said something about giving him a mansion for his 18th birthday, a Lamborghini for his 16th. And while the audience clapped, something about the way Diddy looked at him turned my stomach. It was too familiar. I'd seen that look before. Not admiration, not pride, possession. From then on, I started noticing patterns. Bieber would show up at the house unannounced. Rooms that were normally off limits would be suddenly prepped for guests. Curtains drawn, music off, lights dimmed. I wasn't allowed in those rooms. But I started to wonder what I'd see if I could get inside. The week before it happened, the atmosphere in the house changed completely. Security tightened. The staff shrank. Even the invisible humming that haunted the house seemed louder, sharper, like it was getting closer. I overheard a handler whisper to another, "Make sure the chair is in place." That same day, Diddy passed me in the hallway, looked directly at me, and said, "We're making something special tonight." That's when I knew I wasn't just cleaning a mansion. I was cleaning a stage. That night, when the guard told me to leave because Bieber's coming over, I made a decision. I wasn't going to look away anymore. I used the crawl space hidden behind the false cabinet in the east wing. It had been used once during renovations, and I kept the panel loose, just in case. It ran behind 3 rooms: the study, the theater, and the so-called performance lounge. I crawled through in the dark, heart pounding so hard I thought it might echo through the walls. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe just a private concert. Maybe something strange but harmless. But the moment I saw the setup, I knew I'd made a mistake. There was a velvet chair in the center of a stone floor. No carpet, no windows, no audience, just soft amber lighting and silence so deep it made my ears ring. And then they came in. Diddy. First, always first. Calm, deliberate, then Justin. Smaller than I remembered. Timid, confused. Diddy clapped once and said it. "I want to see you perform." At first, it was quiet. Justin cleared his throat and began singing. Something soft, something acoustic. His voice was still boyish. There was nothing glamorous about it. No stage lights, no backing track. Just raw, trembling notes in a room that swallowed sound. But Diddy stopped him with a single wave of his hand. "Nah," he said. "I don't want to hear you sing. I want to see you perform." Those words changed the air. It was like something snapped into place, not with sound, but with silence, a thick, heavy silence that settled into the corners of the room like fog. Justin stood there, frozen. He looked like he was waiting for someone to explain the rules of the game he hadn't agreed to play. But there was no instruction, just Diddy's voice again, quieter now, dripping with something unspoken. "Be your authentic self. Don't hold back. Whatever comes from your heart, that's what I want to see." Justin didn't reply. From my hiding place behind the wall, I could see the corner of the chair, the floor beneath it, and one of Justin's feet. I watched that foot shift on the stone. I watched it start to move, not in rhythm, not to music, just movement. Desperate, stilted, erratic. He began to dance, not in the way you'd imagine a pop star dancing for a crowd. This wasn't choreography. This wasn't entertainment. It looked like survival. His limbs jerked in uneven patterns, like they were being pulled by different forces. His face didn't match his body. He kept trying to keep it still, as if holding it neutral would stop the panic from leaking through. But his eyes were screaming. And Diddy? He just watched, leaning forward, elbows on knees, like a man being served his favorite meal. The hunger in his face wasn't about art. It wasn't about music. It was about power. Behind the chair, a small red light blinked faintly. A camera. Recording. Why was it recording? Who would want to watch this? I don't know how long it went on. My sense of time collapsed. My knees were shaking. I felt wires cutting into my back, dust burning in my throat. At some point, I had to press my palms over my ears. I couldn't take it anymore. But even through the muffled silence, I heard Diddy say something that will haunt me for the rest of my life. "You always gonna remember this moment. You always gonna remember me." And then Justin laughed. But it wasn't real. It was this breathless, hollow sound, like his mind had split from his body and left a recording of itself behind. It wasn't joy. It wasn't embarrassment. It was something far worse, a laugh shaped like a scream. When it was finally over, I stayed in the wall, frozen. My legs were numb. My fingers were wet with sweat. I didn't even remember crawling backward. I just knew I had to get out. Every inch I moved, the air got heavier, like the house itself was trying to hold me there. I burst out through the cabinet and stumbled into the hallway. My chest was tight. I felt like I was choking on something invisible. The foyer was 20, maybe 30 feet away. The door was just ahead. The light outside glowed through the stained glass. And then I saw him. Diddy. Standing in front of the door like he had been waiting. Like he already knew I'd be there. He smiled. Not the grin you've seen in photos, not the PR smile. This one was slow and sharp. It stretched wide enough to show the top row of his teeth. And there was something behind it. Satisfaction? Ownership? I'll never know. "Did you like the performance?" he asked. My mouth opened, but no words came. My hands hung limply at my sides. And then I saw it. The thing standing beside him. At first I thought it was just another bodyguard, tall, broad. But as my eyes adjusted, I realized it wasn't wearing clothes. It wasn't wearing anything. It wasn't even human. Its shape was wrong. Hunched, like its bones had been put in backwards. And where its head should have been, there was nothing. Just a smooth black void that seemed to eat the light around it. And yet, somehow, I knew it was looking at me. Its hand rested on Diddy's shoulder, not protectively, possessively, like it owned him. Or maybe, like it came through him. "You work here," Diddy said softly. "You're part of the house." That's when I broke. I don't remember opening the door. I don't remember running down the steps or how I ended up behind the garage. I just know I saw a black SUV idling, engine still warm, keys in the ignition. I didn't hesitate. I jumped in, slammed the door, and floored it. The tires screamed. Gravel flew behind me. I didn't care. I didn't even know where I was driving. My only goal was away. But the further I got, the more I realized something was wrong. The house was gone, but I still felt watched. I drove for 20 minutes, making turns at random, avoiding freeways. Every time I blinked, I saw Diddy's face, that smile, and the shape beside him, blank, black, knowing. Eventually, I pulled into a broken-down gas station at the edge of a dying neighborhood. Half the pumps were taped off. The lights flickered. It felt forgotten. And that made it perfect. I got out and sat in the phone booth beside the building. It wasn't even connected. But I needed the illusion of safety. I needed something that didn't feel digital. I booked an Uber to LAX. I told the driver I'd just left a bad gig and didn't feel like talking. He nodded. Bless him for that. At the airport, I had no bags, no ID under my real name. Just $900 in cash I'd stashed in my sock drawer weeks before. Emergency money. This was the emergency. I booked a flight to Chicago. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Justin's face, that hollow laugh, that chair, that light, that red dot on the camera. The moment I landed, I checked into a rundown motel, paid cash, turned off my phone, deleted my social media. I stayed there for a week. No calls, no emails, no noise, but silence wasn't peace. Silence was a different kind of haunting. Every time I turned on the TV, Diddy was there, smiling, hosting, performing. Then came the images of Justin. He was pale. His eyes darted in interviews. He said things that didn't make sense. He collapsed on stage, canceled tours, disappeared for months. People said it was stress, fame, anxiety. But I knew what broke him. Eventually, I moved again. Took a new name, found odd jobs that didn't ask questions, cleaning, delivery, night shifts. I never stayed in one place too long, never used my real name. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't outrun that night. I couldn't outrun the house. It followed me, not in footsteps, but in feeling. Every now and then, I get this pressure in my chest. Like the walls are too close, like I'm back in that crawl space, like something is watching just outside the edge of light. I've tried not to watch anything Diddy's in, but he shows up anyway. A meme, a headline, a video clip I didn't ask for. And sometimes, Justin shows up too. blank-eyed, robotic, repeating words that don't feel his, singing songs he probably didn't write, posing in pictures like a mannequin with a memory. He hasn't been the same since that night. People say the past fades, but this one didn't. The sound from the house, the hum, it never left me. Sometimes I still hear it, in my teeth, in the back of my skull, when a room is too quiet, when I'm alone with no clock on the wall. I've learned to stay hidden, changed IDs, burned old documents, deleted every trace of who I used to be. But deep down, I know none of it matters. That house remembers. That thing remembers. And if Justin still feels it, if he still hears the hum, I don't think he ever really left. I think part of him is still performing, trapped in that night, replaying a performance no one was meant to see. So if this story disturbed you, if it made you pause even for a second, then remember this. Not every monster hides in the dark. Some smile in daylight. And some houses never let you leave.